Hello and welcome to Bargain Bin. It's a video game podcast where myself, Jonny, and
Me, Jamie.
review video games under $15 each week. And we kind of try to treat it like we're sorting through the bargain bin at your favorite local game store. And we're trying to separate the something from the chaff. Is it the wheat from the chaff? I don't know. There's a farming metaphor in there somewhere, but we're trying to
I've
pick
never heard that saying before in my life.
we're trying to pick the good ones, and we're trying to let the bad ones flow away down the river, just like the river and the lake outside the city of Ink in this week's game. Well, somewhat this week's game. We'll get into a little bit more why it wasn't entirely this week's game, but was mostly this week's game. Darkway, Murder of King Mir. And essentially what this is, if you're wondering about the spelling, that is Darkway, all one word, colon, Murder of King Mir. It's a game on Steam for $7.99. It is kind of like it's a mystery game. You're walking around this city that's kind of in that classic style Jamie and me have been getting into recently of the PSX graphics. You are a detective's apprentice, and you are going around basically talking to different individuals to try to uncover what happened with this murder. There are a few other mechanics. There's like a pry mechanic. There's doing favors for people. But really what it boils down to is you're walking around this town trying to solve a mystery by talking to people. And it was developed by Immortal Studios. And the developer goes by Ekpap. I believe his name is Pierce. I found this game on Instagram first things first. So it was an interesting bit of exploration to find this one, and it certainly is an exploration game. Is there anything you kind of wanted to add, Jam, before we dive in?
I don't really think so, besides maybe just outlining that it's a story-based game. It's like a 3D platformer. Would you call that a platformer? So you're like,
I wouldn't really say platformer. I mean, you can jump in this one, but like you're mostly just walking around this map.
how would you label that? It's just a 3D world.
It's kind of like, yeah, like it would be more of a adventure game, I would say. So not an action adventure, but it's kind of like a mystery adventure game in a 3D world.
I see.
Because
Yeah, and I feel
adventure
like
is kind of anything where you're walking around.
I see. Gotcha. Yeah, and I feel like most murder mysteries I see as point and clicks, or like would think it would be a point and click or something very 2D. But yeah, this is a 3D adventure game.
Right. And diving into the story here, we're both playing it on, we have it on Steam, and it works for Windows and Mac, which is cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for Steam Deck. It's very much not optimized. So I know Jamie and me both tried to pull it up on our Steam Decks the same day when she was flying into DC from Seattle. And I was here in DC already trying to play it on my Steam Deck, and we kind of put our heads together right after she landed, and I was like, so did you try to play that game on the Steam Deck? And she was like, yeah, and we were kind of laughing about it because it really chugs along at like maybe 5 frames per second. It's rough. You're pushing the directional stick where you want to go, and it's like a lag of like a few seconds before you see 1 frame pass by and you move forward. So it's hard
it's not even just like a bad quality game on the Steam Deck. It is impossible to play on the Steam Deck.
Yeah, it's unplayable. So I'm still here on the East Coast. I was able to boot it up on my laptop, so it worked on like a newer MacBook laptop. And then I know Jamie played it on her PC when she got back home. So we do have some thoughts. We weren't able to finish it entirely, but it certainly was an interesting game to play. So I'm excited to dive right in. We've also got a few other kind of goodies for you at the end of the episode to make up for what is a little bit less of a complete playthrough than we would have liked. So Jamie, do you kind of want to dive into your experience with the game?
Yeah, sure. I guess when it first starts out, my initial impressions were that the art style was really cool. You kind of get dropped off in front of a door and you have to walk across this bridge into the city where you're going to be investigating the murder. You're like a detective's apprentice who's been assigned to this. And walking across the bridge into the city was really cool because you see like the cityscape in front of you. There are a bunch of different layers to it. And I just thought that was really pretty. Um, and then the very initial introduction of some of the mechanics I thought were very interesting. Jonny kind of hinted at them, like there was some like favors and some prying. So there's kind of like a likability aspect that you can gather or engender with the different people that you're talking to in the city. And you can do favors for them, which make them like you more or trust you more. And then when you pry, that's kind of, detective-esque to prying more information out of them, which makes the people in the city dislike you more or not trust you as much. So it's kind of a balance between you're doing favors for the people in the city or the dogs in the city in order to gain the likability so that you can then pry and gather more information. And I thought that was like a really interesting aspect. When it was being introduced, it kind of made me think of different board or card game mechanics where, you're kind of like doing favors to gather up the resource to then spend it to pry safely and things like that. But I don't know why my game was likening it to board games. I mean, it's just games in general, game mechanics. Yeah, any thoughts on that before I talk about other things?
Yeah, I think it was interesting that one of the like form, like kind of the basis of your detective powers is that you can read people's minds to a degree. It's called like insight, and so
Right.
you get insight on each person you talk to, which is kind of like the base layer. And then when you pry, you kind of pry deeper into their psyche, which is a dark and interesting kind of thematic note to be the basis of like the detecting going on, which I did like. I'm into that kind of grimdark stuff. I also thought, just like you kind of touched on, the fact that all the characters you're talking to are like differently illustrated dogs with different backgrounds and different voices. There's like voice acting in here, and you can tell it was done by kind of like the developer and his friends. Probably it's not like super professional grade, but like I like that it's there, and I like the effort, and it kind of gives a lot of texture to the world and its characters. There's also like an interesting amount of lore woven throughout, which I'm not sure if you were going to get into later, but like the characters will talk about, like, I fought in, the Raven War, and there's like there's kind of these different factions and different cults kind of rumored to be living throughout the town, and that all comes out in this dialogue and in your ability to look into characters' minds and pry into them. So I thought that was really interesting, a way to add texture to a narrative without necessarily like writing down all of the lore. It kind of just comes out naturally through dialogue as you're investigating.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, you mentioned like some of the voice acting, like since this is a game and so then kind of intended to be an immersive experience, like Jonny mentioned, like it does sound like the voice acting was done by the developer and maybe like a friend or two. Um, and I think that kind of ties into also some of the other feelings I had about this game, like kind of like the art too, where I kept going back and forth on how I felt about it and if I like liked and appreciated some of the things or if it kind of rubbed me the wrong way or just like didn't quite sit smoothly in my mind. And so like the voice acting is really cool that they have it for every character and the characters sound different. There are different voices for them. But the quality of the recordings I feel like is pretty poor. Like the volume differs sometimes even in the same dialogue. You can tell it was two separate recordings. Some are loud, some it feels like the person was whispering in the recording, and there's a lot of dialogue. So I feel like that's a little tough. I actually got to the point where I turned the voice dialogue off because
Mm-hmm.
it was actually just kind of starting to bother me too much. And it's tough being in the place where I was like, it's really cool that they did this and put the effort into it, but it unfortunately didn't feel like it was the quality enough to make it worth it. Like it was like you kind of got to put in enough effort to like actually make it stick and be good enough. And if you miss that mark, then it kind of just seems like your effort is futile. And for me, it like degraded from the game. And yeah, I turned off the dialogue because I was like, I would rather kind of just read this.
Yeah, it definitely read to me as something where like I said in my initial comment bringing it up, I do appreciate the effort and I kind of like the DIY quality of it. At the same time, while I think some voices were outstanding, like there's a character kind of with this Scottish accent that I thought was like really funny and well done. But then I think a lot of them are just like it's not really someone doing a voice. It's just kind of talking and reading the lines. And in some lines, they even like mispronounce words. And it reads to me what I think, again, like you said, is emblematic of some other aspects of the game, which I'm sure we'll get into, is like this developer obviously had a vision and bit off like so much as far as like, I want it to be fully voice acted. Like you see so few indie games, even the ones that are worked on by like small teams of people who had been in the industry for years, like you just see those games and like huge JRPGs and stuff being like just voiced by these little like, blips and bleeps. And this one's like fully voice acted and you're kind of like trying to dive into this huge story with a lot of lore and a lot of moving pieces. And as far as I, could see, it was like pretty much just a solo dev trying to do this and push it out the door somewhat quickly because I know he was kind of on a time crunch with like money and trying to support or his girlfriend supporting him while he's making this game. And I think like you can see where it gets a little rough around the edges based on that crunch. So like I said, hats off for the DIY nature of it. And you can also tell that it's like built with love in that way too. But I think sometimes it doesn't make for the best experience as far as like comparing it to other games and the experience that we want to have when we're playing games. I agree with in the case of the voice acting and a few other elements. No.
Yeah, and I feel like there are different metaphors or comparisons you can make to this, but it's kind of like the jack of all trades, master of none versus being really good at one thing. It's like when you only have so much time and resources, trying to do everything might mean mediocrity in all of those things. And for games, I mean, sometimes people enjoy that in games and it can be still a fun experience. But sometimes it's best to like put that energy trying to add a feature into making the other features better.
Totally. Yeah. Like for instance, you can tell that maybe way more work was putting into finishing up the voice acting than like optimizing the game. Because like I know that, it's not a game big enough to make my laptop and of course certainly the Steam Deck chug as much as it does. But like, I've seen way more beautiful games work perfectly on the Steam Deck. So I know it's not like a graphics thing. It's more just kind of like you can tell the work wasn't put there, which is fine. Like we found other ways to play it, but that's kind of one of the polished things that I think you're talking about. And I agree. I noticed something. I want to put something to you, Jamie, just kind of to enter another vein of the conversation here for a moment.
Is this like introducing another thought train completely? Because I did have another thought kind of in the realm of the voice acting. And I had mentioned I didn't know how I felt about things.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Are you sure? Because if your thing is related, it might be similar.
No. I would go ahead.
Well, the other thing I was going to say of things that I didn't know how I felt, one of which was the voice acting, and the other was the art. When it was first being introduced, like the art of the map you receive, the art of the menu and some of the items you get, I thought it was pretty cool. But then something in me was like, this feels kind of weird. Like it doesn't really fit the style of the actual city in the game. Like the style of the characters and the world is very different than the style of like your menu and your map and the items you get. And as you get more things, I like started to realize that it looked like the art of a lot of the items. It looked like it was just kind of done on like an iPad drawing map with some like stylus pressure pen. And it was like something that I really noticed. So that was kind of another thing where like I kept flipping back and forth on being like, do I think this is cool or do I think this is cheap? And I think that was like very similar to how I felt about the voice acting.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely a representative statement. I mean, you can tell that the game had a stylistic direction, and I think the developer is like an artist by trade. And so it's not like the drawings are bad. It's not like the graphics are bad. It's not like all of the voice acting is bad, but I think how it hangs together as a entire game is in question for me, and it sounds like for you too.
Yeah, and I think that's why I kept going back and forth on things, is because individually I was like, oh, like this is really good, this is really cool, but then as a whole it didn't feel like the threads were being woven together quite in a cohesive manner.
Yeah, I agree. What I was going to say was I read a review for this game. It says, if you're a fan of murder mysteries, we urge you to pick this one up. This is just, paraphrasing at the end. You'll be pleasantly surprised. I kind of wanted to dig into the are you surprised element? Because for me, as like a fan of the genre, I felt like this game was pretty formulaic. And I almost felt like maybe this is somewhat related to what we were talking about. So maybe it wasn't the worst transition. Like, I almost feel like its mystery elements clash with its gameplay elements, as far as like while you're doing these favors and while you're doing these essentially like fetch quests where you're like, get this sweet bun for this character because he needs to eat and I'm his sister and I care about him, and then you give him the sweet bun and you get favorability with both characters, and eventually like the sweet bun's in your inventory and whatnot, and so on and so forth. Like, that feels like it breaks up my understanding of what exactly is going on and what I'm investigating, where it's like I'm walking around the world, I'm seeing, this pretty beautiful kind of PSX graphic city. It's vibey, it's snowy, it almost is pretty reminiscent of Easy Delivery Co., except you trade in your K truck for a very slow pair of legs. And I don't know, I just feel like if I'm doing a mystery game, I want it to be more like snappy mystery stuff, kind of like slowly drip feeding me the mystery, but in like these very bite-sized elements. And then if I want more of like an exploration, environmentally based game with less dialogue and less kind of to ponder out in my head, I feel like the game could have leaned into that more, because another element that is somewhat confusingly like introduced by the developer and like touted on the game's Steam page is like you can jump and like use your agility to explore different parts of the city. And I just found the jumping like completely confusing, and like you're supposed to traverse these different paths and discover secrets, but like as often you'll just like slide off the side of a ledge and be in a place that you can't get out of. That's kind of glitchy. And I just feel like it goes back to the same point you were making about the voice acting, which is like there are a lot of good ideas in this, but I think the game kind of gets in its own way in how much it tries to do at once, which leads to kind of the mystery being obscured. Apparently there are like 20 endings, and like I didn't even get one ending because I couldn't figure out how to, well, I didn't have enough time and I couldn't figure out how to like progress in certain elements of the game. So I don't know, that's all to say.
There are supposed to be 20 endings? Is that like if you convict the 20 different people?
It's like 20 potential endings. Yeah, exactly. So
oh, I see how that is what it means, because I did get to the point where I convicted a couple of people, and like there's like a little, I don't know if you did that. Did you do that at all?
I didn't. I'd like you to tell me about that, just because I didn't get that far.
There's kind of like a small cutscene that just like explains about the conviction and the person, and basically if they were guilty or not. So I'm curious if that's what they mean about the different endings, is you just get like a small little blurb like that. But yeah, I would completely agree with what you were talking about. And again, yeah, it just is one of those things where it feels like this game was trying to do too much with the resources that it had and ended up kind of falling short of that. Because it is true, like if this game wanted to be kind of like an exploration game where you can jump and use your movement to explore cool places, it like did not do that well. Especially like I'm playing Big Hops right now, which I'll probably talk about a little bit later, and that's like all about how you can explore and get to different places with your movement and like with that dexterity of your character and the controls. And This game was just so not that. Like, it was, there were like things you could explore. Like, there are little ladders that you can try to jump up, but it's like so hard to jump up the ladders, and it's like weird and doesn't feel good. And I feel like there are other aspects where you can explore and find things, but if you find them before you've introduced, I guess, the quest to find them, you can't grab them. And maybe some people prefer that. I feel like I don't really. It felt like there were things to explore, but actually not really that much reward for the different places. Like, you can't collect things if you find like a fun little place to go in. You basically just have to unlock the favor or like the side quest for certain items, and then some of the remote places you can get to and explore, you might end up having to go there to find something. Um, but yeah, I agree. Like, the movement in this game is pretty bad, which makes it a tough experience for an exploration game. I wouldn't say it was awful. Like, I was still enjoying going through this game and playing it and moving around, but it doesn't make it an incredible or great experience by any means.
Yeah, and it's a third person kind of over the shoulder view. You can see your little dog as it jumps around. And I guess the other thing that brings to mind as far as like other mystery games that are doing similar things where you can like walk around an environment, I think like the gold standard is like Return of the Obra Dinn, also made by a single developer who's become like wildly famous, Lucas Pope. And I think what Obra Dinn does a lot better than Darkway, Murder of King Lear, just had to look at the name again, is like, well, Obra Dinn is like considered the best deduction game ever made, so it's kind of a tough comparison. But what Obra Dinn does really well is you're kind of like moving throughout this pretty contained space, kind of like you're doing here in this game we're talking about, but the mystery is kind of unfolded to you at every turn. So like at every new turn, there's like something you can click to gain new information, and it's all shown very visually. Like, there is some voice acting, but it's all shown very visually. Like, oh, this person was pushed overboard, or this person was kind of like writing in their study, and you see that animated for you instead of just all being like dished out in dialogue, which I think can get a little garbled. And then once you've gone through the ship entirely, you can kind of go back and see if you've missed anything, instead of like having like to finish the mystery by the time you finish the ship, if that makes sense. So like the main break in gameplay comes after you have the majority of the information, instead of like the break in gameplay happening alongside you getting information with like doing these fetch quests in Murder of King Lear to try to gain favor and pry deeper into character psyches. So I just think that was an interesting kind of juxtaposition as far as like where the space takes place in a mystery game can be so impactful to how the game strikes its users. Because I like to think about the musical metaphor of like, you know, the best jazz players will say like the space that you leave in a solo is as important as like the notes that you play, right? And I think that that's interesting, that like where the space is left in those two mystery games really makes such a huge difference for me.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the things you said that made me think thoughts were that you enjoy mystery games that sort of drip feed you the mystery little by little. And then also you talking about Obra Dinn, like unlocking parts of the mystery at every corner. And it made me think about how with this game, even though it seems to be categorized as a mystery game, I felt like it was much more of a lore game or lore story. I played this game a little bit more than you did. I don't know how deep you got into some of the world lore, but I felt like as I was playing this game, I don't feel like I was discovering anything really about the murder or the mystery, or even getting closer to like who might have done it. You do discover things of being like, okay, what really happened? Like, how did this murder occur? You discover aspects of that, but I really was not picking up on anything of like potential motives, why this might have happened, who potentially did it. But instead, I feel like this game was uncovering the lore of the world, which I did find pretty cool. Like, I think a sentiment, honestly, I had from this game is that I would have rather this been a book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's so much lore, and it seems like there's a lot of thought into the world that this game was set in. And I think it could have been or could be a really cool book, especially like with a murder mystery as well. But in game format, in the murder mystery format, it again just kind of felt not very cohesive. I was like, okay, I'm learning a lot about this lore, but who killed King Mir? Like, I want to know who killed King Mir. The lore is cool, but this is a murder mystery, right? And so there are aspects like that that just didn't really align for me. And then it also felt like the lore was, again, trying to do too much for what the game was advertising
Mm-hmm.
or what it was like actually capable of being.
Yeah, that is an interesting comment, and I almost wonder, as someone who's attempted to write my own fiction in the past, it's like we've been talking about how, this game should kind of double down and focus on one of the elements. I was almost earlier going to say, and we've said this about other games too, like I almost wish this was just a visual novel, where it's like more directed by the developer toward an ending or two instead of 20, where you're more interpreting it for yourself and getting garbled through all of this jumping and running around the world. So similar sentiment, but I wonder also if like the lore and the world building is where they were finding their joy, and like leaving it open-ended to the player or letting the player kind of convict any of 20 people or what have you, like, is a way to avoid focusing the story more from an author perspective, because that's what you would have to do with like a book, where it's like a book can only have one path unless it's like a choose your own adventure book. And I wonder if like this developer's interest was like, creating this rich lore-filled world that a character could run around and just enjoy themselves in for a few hours, because like you said, it is quite enjoyable to kind of walk around the snowy streets when the game runs, and like it's pretty vibey, but I agree with you, it doesn't feel directed enough to hold together as a cohesive mystery experience.
Yeah, and I did get to the point towards the end of my play where I really felt like I'd uncovered enough information to where I should be starting to narrow it down between some people. And I couldn't. I was like looking through the list and my notes on them. And I was like, it doesn't feel like it's any of these people, or it could be all of them. And there were still some people that I didn't have any notes on. And I was starting to get to the point where I felt like I had talked to everyone. I felt like I had uncovered anything. So I didn't know where to keep searching for more information. And so I was at a point where I felt unguided. I didn't know what to look for. I was like struggling to start remembering things. The notes on things didn't seem that great. The triggers for like where to search didn't seem that great. And I think maybe there's a part of that where that is kind of just part of the experience in games like this. Like, you don't want too much hand holding, because part of it is like you have to figure it out and keep exploring places and check back on the things you missed. But I don't know. I did find that difficult, and I found myself wondering if that was a flaw of the game or just a nature of the genre, and also potentially me trying to finish it quickly in a certain amount of time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I also just want to make sure we continue to caveat is like, we did not explore the entirety of the game. Jamie explored more than me, so I would trust her thoughts more than mine. But it's something that like I want to make sure, especially as it seems like we're heading toward a do not endorse verdict. But I don't want to predict the future. I think it's worth mentioning that like we're certainly not trying to badmouth the game or make it seem like less of an accomplishment. It is a huge accomplishment to release a game like this with so many wonderful elements as we described. I think it's just giving it its correct due for, you're spending $8 on this, want to make sure you have a full picture. And for $8, like, if it sounds at all interesting, consider picking it up. It is an interesting piece of art, I must say. But yeah, we have that to offer. Is there anything else you wanted to talk through, Jam, before we kind of endorse or not endorse, and then move on to discussing another detective-based game that we played together this week?
don't know. I mean, yeah, I do maybe want to say that like I was enjoying playing this game as I was going through it, and like the characters are pretty fun. Like there are a variety of characters with different personalities and different stories, and those are cool to discover. Um, yeah, so I guess I do want to emphasize that I was enjoying going through this game, but again, yeah, our role is to like recommend or not recommend based off of it being a bargain or also like compared to other games you might get. I did come across a couple different bugs. Two of them made me have to like close the game from Steam
Hmm.
because it was actually like impossible for me to open a menu or do anything else. So that was a
Yeah.
little tough, but is also sometimes the nature of just a newly released game. And as bugs get reported, hopefully they get fixed. They often do get fixed. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention that I found, I guess this is just like another qualm vent, I don't know, was that, like you have a notebook of people or creatures in the town and you unlock a potential motive and a potential means for them. And once you've unlocked both, you can convict them. Um, and I really couldn't figure out if that was available for every character because I had some characters where I didn't have any. I had some characters where I'd only gotten one so far.
Hmm.
Um, but then like they also throw in there like there's a crow you can talk to at some point, and they put the crow in the notes for a motive and a means. So it looks like you should be able to unlock those. But if you try to talk to the crow, like there's no extra dialogue you can get out of it. And then in the Steam description, it talks about you can convict everyone except the crow.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That just like felt a little confusing to me that they would put the crow in the notebook like that if you can't actually find a motive or a means or convict it. Like just kind of confusing UI in that
Yeah.
regard.
Yeah, and I think again that's somewhat representative of our confusions with this game, where there are just certain elements that don't make a lot of sense to us as the users, and we are but two individual users. If you want to see Jamie's user experience on this one, I believe she did stream it, and we'll probably have some videos up on Little Red Jam, which I'll definitely be checking out since she got farther than me.
Yeah, I
Um,
did a stream of the first little bit on my Twitch, and then I recorded the second bit, and I'll probably uh I'll either upload the full playthrough on my YouTube, like connecting the videos together. I think I'll probably end up doing that. I think I'm gonna create like a VOD YouTube account, so any of the games that I do end up just streaming, those will go there. But I think this one will go up on my regular YouTube.
a little peek behind the little red curtain. The other thing was Jamie mentioned that this was a recently released game. I did just want to mention that it came out on December 19th, 2025. And it looks like the developer is, still updating it here and there. I also ran into a couple bugs for what it's worth, which makes sense with the minuscule team of one that was working on this, it appears. So, Jamie, do you want to go ahead and move on to endorsements? I will just start and say that I do not endorse this game for a lot of the reasons we've mentioned. I do think I kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth with it because it is kind of the exact thing that I love as far as like vibey, wintry, mystery, animals, cute, creepy, lore rich, all that sort of stuff. Like if it were a book, I would read the hell out of this. It would remind me a lot of The Tainted Cup, I think, which is a book series I love by Robert Jackson Bennett. But the kind of last word that I have on this game is like, if you had told me a game like this exists and then my feeling coming away from it, like I played a couple hours of it and my feeling coming away from it was like, I'm kind of dreading booting it up again. Like, I would be really surprised, but that is the vibe that I got. And so, even though thematically and on the surface, judging a book by its cover, it looks right up my alley, it just really wasn't for me. So that's why I don't endorse it.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I think I similarly ultimately wouldn't endorse it. I think for me, it comes from a point of just feeling like there are likely a lot better mystery game experiences out there. It's like, I don't think this one was bad, but I think it's just because I don't really feel like it's worth the time or money. Like, it didn't give me a feeling of a unique, profound experience, but it also just, I don't know. Like, we talked about it. Like, it felt like it was trying to do something unique and special or something kind of out of the ordinary, but just didn't really achieve it on that front, which makes it, yeah, I think not a recommendation or an endorsement for me. But it like, yeah, it was like still having a good time, and like there are plenty of positive reviews. So like there are a lot of people who have really enjoyed this game. So like I think there is still the possibility for someone to enjoy it. But I think it just might be a little riskier, or we're not as confident endorsing it, feeling like someone will pick this up and enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. It just doesn't feel quite as generous for the time that you would put into it, to my eye. And it honestly does feel like the kind of game that should be a split decision, just because I am so into this. But yeah, I feel like it's telling that it's not. So that's where we fall on it. Jamie, let's go ahead and talk now about Detective Instinct Farewell, My Beloved. This was kind of a game that came out of the blue for us. We were planning on doing King Mir for most of the week, but then when Jamie was in town at my parents' house, and we realized we couldn't play that most of the week since we just had our Steam Decks, we picked up a game that I had bought for my dad, Jamie, and me to play together, called Detective Instinct Farewell, My Beloved. It came out on November 26, 2025, made by Harmonica LLC, the first game of this type made by this team. And it was $20, $19.99, so that's why it wasn't our kind of main game for the week. But we did play through all of it.
I didn't realize it was $20.
Yeah, it was $20. It wasn't even supposed to be a game for this show, but since we did play through all of it, I thought we would just kind of talk about it a little bit and our experience with it. I found it originally because it was on Brendan Bigley's, I think it was like 20th or so on his best games of 2025 list. So I was curious. It reminded me a lot of, just from the videos I've seen of its gameplay, it reminded me a lot of one of my dad and my favorite games, which is actually what got me back into video games and kind of my adult life or college life. The Last Express, which was a 1997 game made by Jordan Mechner, kind of the legendary designer behind Prince of Persia, who I actually got to interview about a retrospective on The Last Express for Eurogamer maybe last year. And that was really fun to meet him and chat about this game that I loved. And this was another mystery kind of point and click action adventure type thing, set on a train predominantly. So I was like, yeah, let's dive in. Farewell, My Beloved. And Jamie, can you just describe how we played this game first and foremost? I think that's the most important part.
Of course. We ended up rigging up your Steam Deck to the TV with a Bluetooth controller. And in the living room of your family home, you, me, your dad, and at the very end, your mom played this game. We read the voices out loud, did a little family voice acting. You handled most of the controls, but it was truly like a group story time experience.
Yeah, I was kind of like acting out a play, which I really liked. I've always been someone who I feel like is theatrical without a consistent way to express that theatricality. So it was a really fun outlet for just like, if you're, if you live with folks and if you want to kind of have a cohesive experience, it doesn't need to be like even playing a puzzle game together. It can just kind of be gathering around and reading the different voices. And we had a lot of fun with it. there are some like point and click elements to this, very light, but mostly it's kind of just going through dialogue options with different characters and trying to discover what happens as two university students kind of uncover the crimes and lore behind these murders that are happening around them. And I don't really want to say much more than that for spoilers' sake, but if you do find voices with it, you'll probably enjoy it. If you like, the kind of like visual novel detective-y type of thing that we kind of wish it seems like King Lear was in that kind of classic style, you'll probably like it. But I guess, Jamie, I'm wondering what your thoughts were on like the payoffs for the story, because that's where like my main qualms come from, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I feel like you will have more thoughts on this game than I do, just like having played more games like this and it being a genre that you like a lot more. Uh, I just struggle more with the story driven games. Um, I felt like it was like a fun experience to do with people, especially in the way that we did, just to spend time with each other. But I don't feel like I got to the end of the game and like felt necessarily satisfied or in awe of the story. It just kind of seemed like the things happened and I was like, oh, okay, like that was the story. Cool. Like we reached the ending.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. My like the reason I love The Last Express is like it's so rich in its like visuals, and the ending is similarly like interesting, a little more interesting than this one. But the ending is grand, at least. I feel like you work toward this grand ending, and it shoots its shot. And for this one, I feel like it more just kind of fizzles out.
Yeah, it did feel
Yeah.
like a fizzle. It's kind of like a very flat ending.
Yeah, at least to our eyes, it sounds like. But there is some creepiness, there is some intrigue, and I thought like overall it was an interesting enough story. I think really what fans of the visual novel genre and mystery genre will appreciate about this game is its pixel art, which is beautiful, and its soundtrack, which is really immersive in my opinion, and was great to kind of have on in the background as we did our silly voices. So I think the vibes are there. I just think the story is a little bit off, and I almost wonder if this game could have benefited a little bit from the lore-rich approach that the King Lear developer had. So maybe Armonica and Pierce should kind of team up there.
Yeah, maybe so. Which, I mean, it does. It's a tough balance. Like if you go too much in the lore direction, because there's only so much writing or words or typography that you can have on the screen for a game. So you really have to pick and choose the most crucial aspects. And you can have too much lore, you can have not enough lore, and finding that balance, I think, is probably what makes a good mystery game into a great one.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I would call this a good one. Like, I enjoyed my time with it. I thought it was interesting and well rendered, and I enjoyed playing it with family, but it wouldn't be my favorite game of all time. And I'm actually surprised it made it that high up on Brendan Bigley's list personally. Do you think we should do endorsements for this one or just kind of leave it at that?
I think we can probably just leave it at that, considering it's like a $20 game and wasn't necessarily our pick of the week. It was more just, a way to spend time together and with your dad. And yeah, it did great at that.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to mention it because it was a fun and unique experience that we had together with gaming. And I don't know, I'm constantly blown away by kind of the beauty and human interaction that can come from games, which is somewhat counterintuitive to what I think a lot of people think when they think of games. Like they think of, someone kind of in their basement playing a first person shooter, but there's so much more to it than that. And I think that that's what makes things like this podcast really enjoyable for me to do with you. And it's what makes experiences like another one I'm going to talk about later on this evening really, I don't know, interesting and heartwarming to me. So with that, we can kind of move on here and dive into our binnable moments. Jamie, would you like me to begin?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I am going to mention, or I'm going to give my main shout out this week to the 3DS. So I've talked about kind of flashing my 3DS in the past and working through some games on there. Finished SteamWorld Heist, which was a wonderful experience. I'm going to be talking to the art director of SteamWorld Heist at the end of next week, and hopefully putting together a podcast and maybe a video with that conversation, which is awesome. Can't wait for that. And I downloaded some other games today on my 3DS because I was going to hang out with my best friend, Musa. And Musa was wanting to kind of see what I was playing on the device. He remembers it from his middle school, high school experience. And so I just picked up a couple of other games, and we were sitting around in the mall in Arlington, this kind of old mall, not much in it. It's kind of getting revitalized, but Ballston Quarter is still not much to look at. There are just these random, like, ratty couches we were sitting on after dinner, and pulled out the 3DS, booted up Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix, which is kind of like this rhythm game with like WarioWare style mini games. And so we were there just rocking out to like the 3DS speakers and kind of tapping buttons and laughing in the middle of this empty mall. And I don't know, there was just something so like beautiful and simple about that moment, that I think like people often cite video games for bringing out like some nostalgic childhood moments. But I think in particular that like handheld video games and like older handheld video games can bring out for folks of our generation is like just those like feelings of like hanging out with your friends after school, like putting your cares to the side and just kind of like vibing out together, just looking over each other's shoulders. And yeah, I mean, just like downloading the 3DS games today, I was just feeling like, a kid in a candy shop. Like I got Cave Story, I got SteamWorld Dig, which is in the Steam world, but like a different style of game, from Image and Form, the same developers. I picked up Rhythm Heaven, which we discussed. I picked up this like drawing app that you can like make vector art on, which is really cool, that I want to show you, Jamie, and a number of other titles. And I don't know, I'm just like so grateful that these technologies are still out there, that you can still like express yourself with, and you're not being like funneled into these, ecosystems of commerce that we've become so accustomed to here in 2026. So that's kind of inspired me to go on this more retro game kick. And I don't know, I'm inspired that my parents still have like a PS3 collecting dust and like the family room console, and like a Wii, the same thing. So I don't know, I'm interested by all those possibilities. And one day when we have a bigger space together, I'm excited to unite all of those childhood consoles in one room. So that'll be fun.
I'm excited for that day too. It's going to be epic. And I'm going to work my butt off on the interior design of a room like that.
It's going to be an epic room. I can't wait to see what paraphernalia makes its way in. But go ahead.
Certainly.
With your,
yeah,
your
I'll do
moments.
my binnable moments now. I probably don't have any that are singularly as deep as yours was, which I loved hearing about that. And I know playing SteamWorld Heist, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Really was bringing you a lot of joy. So yeah, I love hearing about that. I think for me, I mentioned earlier that I was also playing a game called Big Hops. Still in the process of playing that since I've been prioritizing some of the other games, but it's been really fun. I've been enjoying it a lot. The reason it wasn't one of our bargain bin games is also because it's on the expensive side, $20. But it's been really fun so far. It's kind of like a collect-a-thon 3D platformer.
Hell yeah.
We're just like, it's mainly all about, your movement and how you move around the world to access different places. But I've really been enjoying it. I think it's a really good game, and that's been bringing me joy this week. I also really enjoyed the trip we had, I guess that I had, since you're still on it. It's just nice to get out of town, get somewhere else for a little bit, see loved ones, spend some time with people, and relax a little bit. It was very rejuvenating and refreshing. Yeah, I feel like the YouTube and Twitch streaming journey is still going well. I'm enjoying making videos. I'm enjoying streaming and playing games. There are some other games from this past week that I am hoping that I can find time to still play and maybe record some videos on. So I think overall, I'm just feeling really excited about this journey we're on and the games we get to play and share our opinions on or share our playthroughs on and all the games that are ahead of us. So I think that's been a really big thing that's been bringing me excitement and joy and gratitude.
And that brings me to my final binnable moment, which
I
is
like
actually
that. Finable binnable.
finable binnable.
My finable moment.
My final binnable moment, which is actually a final binnable person. And it's you, Jamie.
Aww.
I had such a good time. I feel like when I envisioned this show and pitched it to you, I thought we were going to be like a lot mushier on air, and that was going to be like our gimmick was like, I love you so much. Oh, we love this game. But
really?
I mean, not really, but I thought it could be like a fun bit here and there, and we haven't really like, milked that for all it's worth yet. But this is actually a sincere statement when I say like, this is actually a sincere statement, so listen up.
Most of my statements aren't ever sincere, but this one actually is.
Exactly. I love you. Cut it out. No, but I just wanted to say, like, I feel like traveling and being away from one another for a little bit was like, it just brought up a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings, and I was like almost like nervous to pick you up at the airport, which was like a feeling I hadn't had when like since we've been living together for a while, and like I just had the best like 5 days with you here, and I really appreciate you visiting, and we played games together and we visited new places together, and I just had a great time. So I want to say thank you for engaging with me and supporting me and investing time in kind of us, and I think that's something to celebrate here at the end of the episode, so I just wanted to say it.
Aww. Well, thank you. I also had a really lovely time. And like I said, it was just such a refreshing trip and vacation. I feel like just getting out of your routine and like doing something different and being somewhere different is such a great way to bond and connect with people and really spend quality time with people. And yeah, that's what it was with you. I loved it as well. It felt so great and refreshing. And I appreciate you saying all that on our mushy bargain bin podcast.
And now you get to be home with the daughters, our dog and cat.
Yeah, they've been sweet.
Cute. Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I'm excited to be home with you all quite soon. We'll wrap it up there, but thanks for listening, folks, and we love you, and bye.
I did quickly want to mention that we haven't, the last few podcasts, had our game picks for the coming week prepared to say on the podcast, but once we do decide it, I have been sharing it as a post on my YouTube as well. So if you are ever curious of what we'll be playing during a week, you can kind of stay tuned there, and once we've decided it, I will post it.
Hell yeah, that's super helpful and super awkward for me. I'll say bye a second time. Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.
Soil Day Radio.
For a community of weirdos built on words. Find out more at soildayradio.com.